The fights over education and our government run schools and the parents' rights to have a voice in what goes on in the classroom and in the curriculum has certainly become a national issue. But it all started right here in the greater Washington area in Northern Virginia. So we focus on it quite a bit. But what can you do where you live? What can you do with your child's school, whether it's a college, university, high school, or even a middle school or junior high? Well, one man has some answers to those questions. He's Scott Walker, former governor of Wisconsin, but now president of Young America's Foundation. YAF, of course, really made its name, Governor Walker, in pushing pro liberty, freedom, and conservative ideas on college campuses. But now you're taking what we're seeing in these Northern Virginia school systems, Texas, other school systems around the country, even San Francisco, the fights over their school board, and you're trying to apply the Young America's Foundation model to those schools. I think that's great.
Yeah, that's right. YAF.org if people have students who are interested. It started with Buckley back in colleges years and years ago, but now we've moved into high school, and just this past year we started it into the middle schools because we see the left wingers, the radical indoctrination is starting younger and younger and younger, and we've got to counter that. I don't know about you, Larry, but I think back to my own time in school. By and large, I didn't know at the time for sure what any of my teachers thought about politics. I didn't know whether they were
Nope.
Democrat or Republican. They just helped me learn how to think critically for myself. And sadly, that's becoming scarce, more scarce, I should say, not only in public government-run institutions, but increasingly even in some of the private schools across the country. We've got to push back.
Well, and we've seen the frustration build up in these school board meetings where parents got motivated, they started speaking back, and now they're running for school board and winning in many areas. That's one way to go about this, but I'd love to hear what Young America's Foundation, what parents and students can do on campus at their high schools and middle schools through Young America's Foundation to sort of start clubs and start their own movement on each various school campus.
Well, there's a variety of things. Yeah, we help bring in lectures, speakers, activities, activism, all sorts of other things. In some cases, it's sad that it happens, but it shouldn't happen, at least at government-run or public institutions. But oftentimes, we actually have to provide legal power, working with groups like Alliance Defending Freedom to help push the legal argument that they can't block out groups, conservative groups like Young America's Foundation. At the same time, they give all these other radical groups on the left total exposure and access to rooms and everything else. So we can help students push back on any of that. We can help them organize. We can help bring speakers in. And to help them train to do these things, we have great conferences at places like the Reagan Ranch out in California, the place where President and Mrs. Reagan called their home for the 8 years that they were President and First Lady. We have conferences in the D.C. and Virginia area. We have conferences now all across the country. And it's not just a fun time to hear from great conservative speakers, whether they're elected office or otherwise. It's also a great chance for those students to then get the training and the support that they need. And the number one thing, and you've been a great speaker at these events, Larry, is more than even the speakers, they hear that there's other young people who share their same concerns, who share their same beliefs. And that's really powerful when they go back to their own campuses and schools.
It truly is the best part. As you mentioned, I've been lucky enough to speak at the Reagan Ranch in Santa Barbara, as well as here in Washington, D.C. multiple times. And my favorite part is when the kids stand up and say, I thought I was the only one. I didn't think there was anyone else like me. And there's really power in those numbers. Any parent who's watching this right now, I know that they're interested and want more information. It's YAF.org, YAF.
YF.org. We'd love to have you help get your son or daughter signed up to help them get involved in programs, to give them the support that they need. It seems unusual, but in many ways I feel a special kinship with so many of these students, be it on college campuses or high schools or middle schools, because when they sent 100,000 protesters to take over my state capital years ago, they were trying to intimidate me. Now, thankfully that didn't happen, and we prevailed both on policy and ultimately in the subsequent recall election. But in many ways, that's what they're trying to do to these kids. Is the scale may be different. It may not be 100,000, but it might feel like it to them. But not only with their teachers and professors, but often with classmates and others on social media, they're trying to intimidate them by calling them sexist, racist, transphobic, whatever the issue might be. And they shouldn't back down. They realize they're not alone.
Yeah.
Stand up and speak the truth, and we can help them along the process.
Well, and you've been able to grow your social media presence in such a robust way on YouTube and on Instagram, where these videos of Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles and other notables going to college campuses and speaking with kids, taking questions and answers. It's very empowering. So I'm really impressed that you've been able to do that. I got to ask though, it's got to be here you are. You ran multiple times and won in Wisconsin against great odds and against huge money getting poured in, but you were able to articulate these conservative core principles to voters and they got it. Does it frustrate you that there aren't more Republicans who are seeing what's going on in our schools and not replicating that success? Glenn Youngkin is the outlier. He gets it. He's been able to do it. Why aren't other Republicans seizing on the issue of our schools and public education and making this our issue?
Well, it's frustrating for sure. And in fact, after November's elections, we saw a number of exit polls that showed in the 18 to 29-year-old category, we're just getting obliterated. Nationwide, it's over 65%, but in key states, you mentioned mine, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Arizona, Michigan, where there were key statewide races for governor or U.S. Senator, in some cases both, the margins were more like 70 to 30%. And you're going to see a bunch of the Yahoo consultants in D.C. say, well, that just means we need to run more clever digital ads, or somehow we need to create these special coalitions for students and young people. The truth be told is the reason those numbers are where they're at in this last cycle is not because of ads or coalitions. It's because of years and years of radical indoctrination. And until we start to wake up and realize it takes more than just a media cycle, more than a campaign cycle, it's going to take a long game, which of course we're committed to doing, and why we appreciate people like Governor Youngkin and so many others within his team understanding if we don't get in the schools, if we don't make an impact now, we're going to lose an entire generation. And with that, the prospects of this great republic we call America. We cannot let that happen. We won't lie down. We've got to encourage more people to stand up, whether it's supporting groups like Young America's Foundation or speaking out at the school board meeting or running for the school board yourself, or if you have the chance, taking your kid out of school and homeschooling her and putting him in private school. We cannot allow what's happening today to continue.
And it really is about the message, isn't it? And about making sure that your message resonates. All those professional political consultants that you just mentioned, they're also going to say, well, the candidates are too old too. We got to get young blood, fresh blood. I think of Ronald Reagan, who at the time was the oldest president in our history, and I was a kid when he was president, and he influenced me like no other man in politics. Bernie Sanders, even Joe Biden, and Donald Trump, by the way. These are all presidents who are older than Ronald Reagan, or excuse me, these are politicians who are older than Ronald Reagan was in the 80s, and they have huge followings amongst young voters. So the idea of running a young candidate isn't necessarily the solution. It's just making sure you've got the right ideas and you have to present them in a genuine way.
Ronald Reagan was the happy warrior. It's part of the reason why he won big, not only in 84, but in 80. And as part of that, he actually carried the youth vote. Something I was proud to do when I ran for re-election the second time was we're level with the Democrat candidate with 18 to 24-year-olds in that election. But you got to have a powerful message, and it's got to be optimistic and forward-thinking. It can't just be about nitpicking on the opposition. Yeah, there's plenty to go after, but I think that's one of the reasons why we've talked about every Republican governor in America who stood for election November won. Why? Because they were proven problem solvers. We've got to do more of that, not only to get younger voters, but just voters in general. And I think we can, but we got to get out of the social media mindset that it's all about attacks, and instead about offering positive alternatives that are proven success. And that's what conservatives do. We're proven successful leaders.
So I'm just doing the math here. I'm doing the math. So when you're 75 and you're running for president, because obviously that's the optimal age to run, all these kids that you're influencing in high school and college, they're going to be in their 30s, late, starting to have families. This is perfect. You're a shoo-in, Governor Walker.
Well, I'm a quarter century younger than Joe Biden, but I don't think I'd ever wait that long. Although I'm hoping I'm much more cognitive at that point.
Well, all right, we'll watch that space. Thank you, Governor Walker. Always great to talk with you. And there's going to be a busy year politically, so we'll keep in touch all year long. I'm going to get him in trouble one of these days. I know I am, but not today. Not today. More to come. Keep it here on O'Connor Tonight.